Okay, so Daniel, and right now with Makenzie, what do they do? What do you do? And what's your current job position?
So yeah, I was saying at the beginning, it's a research firm. Core business is research, and we sell subscriptions, and that's about 80% of the business. 20% of the business is bespoke consulting. I'm a bespoke. I mean that they are very specific analysis to answer specific questions, most typically at asset valuation, strategy level, and more performance improvement kind of questions for the clients. Most of our clients are big oil companies, big mining companies, electrical companies, and most of the challenges that we are now trying to solve are more and more related to the energy transition, which is one of the greatest challenges that I think society is going to face. By energy transition, I mean the transformation of sources of energy that's going to be required to stop climate change, to be carbon neutral. So clean energy sources is another way of putting it. So how to, because we as a society consume so much energy and we require so much energy to function, and not only to function, but if we want to grow economically, which is somewhat questionable, I'm not sure if that's something we should pursue, but if we want to grow economically, there is going to be a increasing requirement of obtaining very efficient sources of energy from carbon neutral ways. So all of these challenge, it's impressive how all of this challenge replicates across different parts of the industry. I mean, this challenge, of course, directly impacts oil and gas companies, but not only them, but it also impacts mining companies, because if you want to electrify everything, if you want to use electric cars, you will require a lot of batteries. And if you want batteries, you will require a lot of nickel and lithium and different minerals that require a different scale on different minings. And if you want to do mining in a carbon neutral way, you'll require to use secondary materials much more efficiently than primary. And by secondary, I mean how to recycle on wasted batteries much more efficiently than getting new resources from the ground. So you need to balance those two out. And I'm going just too way into the weeds there, but the whole idea, going back on the high level, is that this big huge energy transition challenge that we're facing, it's probably going to require a very big amount of intellectual power, because it requires a paradigm shift in the way things are done. So that's, I think that's one of our most common challenges that we face, and the companies hire us to um, answer the question as to how to go through that energy transition in a profitable way, or in a less costly way, or how do I start, because there are many companies around the world that don't even see it coming. They understand that it's coming, but don't even are doing nothing yet, and they feel like they can stay the same, but it's not the reality. I mean, uh, probably regulation is going to force a lot of companies to create new processes or to make a lot of sacrifices, and the companies that have not started or are not yet are probably both going to either going to be broke because they're not able to adapt, or be forced out of business out of regulatory reasons. So going back to the question of what we're doing, it's mostly working on these big problems. It's insane, but they are huge problems, and so there's a lot of work there.
But would you say that you are like foreseeing the change so your clients get time to adapt, or would you say it's already happening and you are helping them to transition as fast as possible?
Oh, it's already happening. It's definitely already happening. The pace at which change is happening is not fast enough. That's one of the problems. The other problem is that most of the companies that are on the industry are not completely in control of what happens and what doesn't happen, because there is a certain amount of demand of commodities and of energy that it's in control of downstream industry. So if you see the value chain as energy producing, upstream, midstream, downstream. In that, those three terms can be applied to many different industries, both mining, oil and gas, chemicals, and et cetera, et cetera. The downstream part, the society consumes so much that they leave no choice for the upstream producing energy. They leave no choice. So there is a big part that is not on the control of the upstream part. However, the rate at which change is required on every single part of the value chain is not fast enough. And I think there's probably going to be a combination of factors that will probably force that rate to be fast enough. And that is going to be both in terms of corporate corporate world, so the both corporate Americas, corporate Europe, and the development leading nations setting the example for the rest of the world, and authoritative governments and regulatory governments. So there will be corporate America and corporate Europe making large decisions in change, which they are doing. You probably have seen lots of announcements of energy companies and non-energy companies saying we are going to go carbon neutral by
Yeah.
2030, by 2050, and they always like these round numbers that are either ending at 0 or at 5. And this carbon neutrality is just it's usually motivated both by economical sense and by PR sense, but in a more deep level, it's just a matter of humanity surviving, and it's definitely required at all industries. So going back to the question, I think the the impulse will come from corporate Americas and corporate Europe, and regulatory change in large authoritative countries such as China, Russia, and Latin America, because those countries are much more behind in terms of their corporate priorities. So one example would be our national oil company here in Mexico, or our electrical company. They are not yet thinking about renewables. They are not thinking about climate change. They're just so far behind. They will require to be strong-handed by regulatory pressure or by social pressure, and that's probably applicable in many other developing economies. So I think that's those two factors are going to drive the pace of the change.